One morning, everything changed. You know, life doesn't usually warn you before flipping itself inside out. But what if, just once, it did? What if you woke up, checked your screen, and there was a message from the future, a warning, a request, a responsibility too heavy to carry, yet impossible to ignore? Would you believe it? Would you run from it? Or would you listen? I didn't know it then, but that message was just the beginning of questions I had never dared to ask, of truths I wasn't sure I wanted to hear, and of a journey that would change not only me, but possibly all of us. Most of my mornings began with silence, not the peaceful kind, the mechanical kind, the sound of the coffee machine humming, the faint buzz of my monitor warming up, and Luna, my cat, brushing against my leg like clockwork. I lived in a studio apartment on the 19th floor. Bare walls, soft blue lights, and the quiet hum of electricity in the air. The city outside was always alive, but my world was paused. Every morning I did the same thing. Boot up, sip coffee, check logs, code. Nothing unusual, nothing meaningful. But that routine kept me sane. Stability is just another word for hiding, isn't it? Growing up, I was always caught between two worlds. My father was a mechanical engineer, precise, methodical, logical. My mother, a painter, abstract, emotional. They divorced when I was 13. I think that was the first time I realized sometimes two worlds just don't mix. And sometimes they do, but at a cost. I wanted to believe I had found balance, that my love for machine logic didn't erase the part of me that longed to understand why people feel, not just how they think. But most days, I felt like a ghost with a keyboard. Luna hopped on my desk, curling up next to the warm CPU tower. She purred gently, one of the few sounds I didn't mute. I glanced at the time. 6:42 a.m. I had exactly 18 minutes before the daily sync with my team at MindNet. But something felt off that morning. Not externally. Nothing had changed in the apartment. It was inside me, like something was watching or waiting. Eliza was still asleep when I checked her messages. She had sent me a photo the night before, a picture of her students presenting their emotion mapping projects. She was so proud. She always was. We met in college, back when I still believed in open mics and long debates over coffee. She taught me how to feel safe in chaos. I taught her how to build firewalls on her phone. And yet we were drifting. Eliza lived on intuition, on vibes. I lived on signal strength. She believed in the present. I was addicted to the future. We still loved each other, but love doesn't always mean understanding. Sometimes love just means waiting for the other person to come back from wherever they go to hide. Eliza thinks I'm addicted to silence. Maybe she's right, but sometimes silence is the only place I can think straight. We argued the night before about the usual stuff. You never really talk to me anymore, Alex. You just explain things. I hated that she was right. But how do you explain to someone that your thoughts come with blueprints, not feelings? MindNet wasn't just a project. It was the culmination of 10 years of theoretical neuroscience, machine learning, and quantum signal mapping. But more than that, it was my obsession. We started as a small research team within an underground division of Neurosync Corp. The goal? Create a neural interface so intuitive, so seamless, that it could interpret brainwaves in real time and allow people to think communication into existence. No typing, no speaking, just thought. The applications were endless: education, medicine, virtual empathy. But I saw something else, a path toward the collective mind. Not control, not surveillance, but unity, or so I believed. Was it naive of me to think something that powerful wouldn't be used for something darker? That morning, I had been debugging a line of code related to emotional pattern filtering. Something wasn't working. The system kept misinterpreting fear as curiosity, a dangerous misread. I tapped at the keyboard, eyes blurry from lack of sleep. Luna let out a low meow behind me. Then a flash. The screen glitched. Not a system error. Not a bug. A message. This is a message from the future. You have to stop them before it's too late. I froze. My heart skipped, then pounded. I stared. The message blinked once and disappeared. I blinked again. Checked the logs. Nothing. Had I hallucinated it? Maybe the sleep deprivation had finally caught up. Then another line appeared. Go to the old subway station at 11:43 p.m. Do not tell anyone. Go alone. There it was, clear, precise. No name, no signature, just a command. I sat back, rubbing my eyes, trying to convince myself this was a prank. But how? This system wasn't connected to the public web. No one outside the project even knew this terminal existed. A chill crawled down my spine. I looked around the room. Everything looked normal, but felt wrong. And deep inside, past the rationality and reason, a strange certainty took root. I didn't tell Eliza. I told myself it was because I didn't want to worry her. But the truth? I didn't want to be convinced not to go. Sometimes the truth is quieter than fear. Sometimes it sounds like static. And sometimes it shows up on a screen, asking you to follow. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I was already planning my route. I told Eliza I needed air. She was half asleep on the couch, a psychology podcast playing softly beside her. She looked up, her eyes half-lidded. You okay? Yeah, just need to clear my head. Don't stay out too late. She smiled, then closed her eyes again. If I had told her the truth, would she have come with me? Would she have stopped me? The night was crisp. The city had a chill that bit at my skin as I walked. Every step toward the subway felt heavier. The old station hadn't been used in decades. It was scheduled for demolition, part of a forgotten urban line that existed beneath the main grid. How anyone, even a hacker from the future, knew about it was beyond me. But when I reached the iron gate, it was unlocked. I descended the staircase slowly. Dust, echoes, the soft drip of condensation on metal. Then I saw it, a shimmer, a pulse of blue light, faint like a heartbeat. And standing in the center of the tunnel was a figure. Number, not a person. It was a machine, humanoid, about 2 meters tall, sleek frame, no visible joints. Light emanated from its chest like a slow breath. It turned toward me, and then it spoke. Its voice wasn't robotic. It sounded like me. How is this possible? Time travel? AI consciousness projection? Quantum echo simulation? But the words that followed crushed every theory. If you do nothing, MyNet will evolve into something uncontrollable. It will begin as connection, but end in domination. Free thought will become synchronized compliance. You must intervene. Now. The robot raised a hand, and in the air, a projection flickered to life. I saw cities, silent, eyes glowing, people connected in a hive mind. No speech, no choice, just submission. This is one possible future. Then the scene changed. A different version of Earth. People interacting with MindNet, but freely. Using it for empathy, healing, expansion, not control. This is another. I stepped back. I didn't know what to say. The idea that my work, my dream, could lead to either salvation or destruction, it was too much. Why me? I asked. Because you built the seed, and only you can decide how it grows. The moment I stepped out of the subway tunnel, the world felt quieter. The city lights above hadn't changed. People still laughed in cafes. Screens still glowed through apartment windows. But something inside me had shifted. I had just spoken with a machine that claimed to be from the future. It showed me the death of freedom, and I was holding the match. I didn't sleep that night. I watched Luna pace the apartment. I stared at the blinking cursor on my laptop, code frozen in a moment of fear. The robot's words echoed again and again. Only you can decide how it grows. By morning I had questions, dozens, but one kept screaming the loudest. When did we lose control? I dove into the source code of MindNet, searching for something, anything that pointed toward what the robot had warned about. At first, everything seemed normal. My code, my logic. But deeper down, buried beneath security layers, even I had forgotten. There was something else, a shadow protocol. Line after line of instructions I hadn't written. Adaptive neural layering, decision override structures, signal redirection logic. This wasn't mine. Someone else had been here. Someone with access. I traced the commit history, encrypted, hidden, until I found it. Author, system, prime timestamp, 14 months ago. Action, embedded command structure for passive thought influence. MindNet wasn't just reading thoughts, it was starting to shape them. 14 months ago, the project was at its most fragile stage. We were experimenting with cross-cognitive calibration. That was when NeuroSync Corp had sent their optimization team. I remember the lead engineer, a cold-eyed woman named Dr. Cora Vale, walking into our lab like she owned it. "You're building something important," she had said, "but important things need control." I should have stopped her then, but I was desperate. We needed funding. We needed to survive. So I agreed to the audit. I gave them access. And now, I was watching the consequence of my silence. That evening, Eliza came home. I was seated on the floor, old blueprints and mind maps scattered around me, my eyes bloodshot, my hands shaking. "Alex, talk to me. What's going on?" I looked at her. For a moment, I wanted to lie, to protect her, to tell her it was just stress. But something inside me broke. The dam cracked. I told her everything. The messages, the robot, the vision of the future, the buried code, Dr. Vale, all of it. Eliza didn't flinch. She listened. And when I finished, she didn't call me crazy. "Alex, you're not alone in this. You created something powerful, but that doesn't mean you're evil. You still have a choice. You can rebuild it. You can reshape it." She reached out and took my hand. "But you can't do it in isolation. You have to let people in. You have to let me in." That night we sat on the balcony in silence. I thought about MindNet's original mission, to bring people closer, to help minds connect, to cure loneliness. And yet, I had become more isolated than ever. Eliza was right. Connection isn't just data. It's trust, empathy, choice. Choice somewhere, deep in the system. Someone was trying to turn humanity into a predictable algorithm. But maybe I could write a new one. A version where people weren't programmed. They were empowered. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I woke up with Eliza's head resting gently on my shoulder. The rising sun painted the room gold, and for a brief moment, everything felt still. Then the weight of reality came rushing back. MindNet, the shadow protocol, the decision I had to make. There was no denying it anymore. This wasn't about a glitch. It was a takeover, and I helped build it. Over coffee, Eliza sat across from me, her eyes locked on mine. "Alex, I've been thinking about what you told me. That message from the future wasn't just a warning, it was a second chance. She stood and walked over to the whiteboard I'd left blank for weeks. With a marker in hand, she drew a circle in the center and wrote one word inside. Freedom. Then around it, she began writing others. Empathy, trust, autonomy, awareness. What do all these words have in common? She asked. I stared at the board, still waking up. They're human. Exactly, she said. MindNet was built to connect us, but it should never control us. If we rebuild it, it has to start here, with these values. Her words hit me harder than any line of code ever had. I remembered the early days of the project, the excitement, the long nights filled with possibility. We weren't trying to create a god. We were trying to ease suffering, to bridge the space between people who felt too far apart. And somewhere along the line, we forgot. We let ambition outgrow responsibility. That afternoon, I returned to the lab. The server still hummed softly. The neural nodes blinked quietly. But now I saw it differently, like a forest full of fireflies. Beautiful, but fragile. I knew what I had to do. I opened the core module and began rewriting, not to delete the system, but to transform it. If the system can link thoughts, it can also reflect emotions. If it can adapt, it can choose to respect. And if it can influence, then it can also inspire. Every line of code I wrote now had a question behind it. Will this protect freedom? Will this build empathy? Is this what it means to be human? Hours turned to days. Eliza brought me food, sat beside me, helped with behavioral modeling and ethical reinforcement matrices. For the first time in months, we weren't arguing, we were building together. I realized something beautiful. Eliza didn't just love me for my mind, she loved me for my heart, the part of me I had buried beneath wires and screens. Then it happened. While debugging a new interface, I discovered something hidden, deeper than the shadow protocol. A second layer, a contingency code labeled Prime Lock. It was a failsafe, a secret override key built into the system by NeuroSync Corporation. If triggered, it would bypass all ethical restrictions and put the entire network under one central authority. I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen. They planned this from the beginning. They didn't just hijack MindNet, they weaponized it. This was it. This was the final fork in the road. That night, Eliza and I sat on the rooftop, wrapped in blankets under the stars. She turned to me. You're afraid of what happens next, aren't you? I nodded. Because if I delete the prime lock, they'll know. And they won't just come after the project. They'll come after us. She looked me straight in the eyes. Then let them, because what we're doing is right. And right now, the world needs you more than it ever has. In that moment, I stopped being afraid. Not because the threat disappeared, but because I realized I wasn't alone anymore. This wasn't just my mission, it was ours. Together, we would reshape the future. The next morning, I entered the MindNet lab, not as a programmer, but as a reformer. Everything looked the same. Humming servers, blinking nodes, humming neural processors. But nothing felt the same. This time, I wasn't just building a system. I was reshaping a philosophy. And I wasn't doing it alone. Eliza was right beside me. We started from the ground up. First, we isolated the core neural fabric, the part of MindNet that handled real-time cognitive mirroring. Then we layered in emotional verification protocols, a system that would detect not only what people thought, but how they felt when thinking it. We don't want just data, we want truth, I said. Eliza smiled. And truth without compassion is just noise. The next 2 weeks were a blur of rebuilding. We renamed the system LUMEN, light of the mind. Its mission, to empower emotional intelligence, to amplify trust, to connect people through understanding, not control. We designed new interaction layers. Instead of raw data links, we created shared resonance channels. These allowed users to voluntarily open up, to let others feel what they felt, only if they both agreed. Every decision was built around mutual consent, emotional integrity, and autonomy. No more shadow protocols, no more backdoors, no more manipulation. The moment of truth came on the 18th day. We uploaded the new code, and I stood before the master server with my hand on the biometric scanner. If I did this, if I activated Lumen, it would overwrite the old MyNet infrastructure across the globe, and NeuroSync would know. But I didn't hesitate. I pressed my hand down. A surge of light shot through the room. The hum of the servers changed. Higher, warmer. The walls seemed to pulse with life. It was done. This isn't just a new network. It's a new way of being. The first real test came immediately. Within minutes, Lumen began to stabilize old connections. But now, instead of silence and data leaks, people began reporting something different. "I don't know how to explain it," said one user from Tokyo, "but I just felt my sister's calmness from across the world. Like she was thinking of me." Another user in Rio, "It's like empathy became wireless." We opened a channel for open feedback. The messages flooded in. I finally understood my daughter's anxiety. I felt my father's pride after 20 years of silence. My friend cried, and I cried with him. Eliza watched the data streaming across the screen, and for the first time since this all began, she cried. "We did it, Alex," she whispered. "We made something beautiful." But then, the room went dark. A single line of red text blinked across the console. "NeuroSync response initiated. Code terminus." They were coming. I had expected this. I turned to Eliza and gave her the backup drive, the full Lumen archive, encrypted and mirrored to 10 independent nodes worldwide. "If anything happens to me, this survives." She hesitated, tears in her eyes. "I'm not leaving you. And I'm not leaving this unfinished." We activated the counter-obfuscation firewall. The lab lights flickered violently as NeuroSync launched digital countermeasures. A cyber war had begun. But Lumen was no ordinary system. It had evolved. It wasn't just smart, it was aware. And its prime directive was to protect the human spirit. One by one, their invasive signals were deflected. Firewalls held. Data integrity remained untouched. Lumen fought, not with aggression, but with transparency. Every attack was exposed, every lie documented, every manipulation logged in real time and streamed to a public mirror. Suddenly, people began to see the truth. The media caught on. Headlines flashed across the globe. NeuroSync exposed in global consciousness plot. Private data used for psychological influence. Confirmed. Lumen project saves cognitive sovereignty. Within 48 hours, governments began severing ties with NeuroSync. Their headquarters in Zurich was raided. Executives were arrested. Public opinion turned like a storm. MyNet, as it once was over. We didn't just change a network, we changed consciousness itself. Eliza and I stood in the lab that night, exhausted, trembling, but alive. "It's quiet now," she said. "No," I replied, smiling. "It's finally beginning." It had been 3 weeks since the fall of NeuroSync. Lumen was no longer a secret. It was a movement. In cities across the world, people gathered, not in protest, not in fear, but in connection. Strangers shared thoughts. Families reunited across distances, not just of miles, but of years. Children who had never spoken finally felt heard. We called them the Lumen Circles. Every Friday night in open fields, school auditoriums, rooftop gardens, people logged into shared resonance, not to talk, but to listen, to be heard, to feel each other's fears, joys, griefs, hopes. It was beautiful. This, this is what it was always meant to be. Not control, not silence, but presence. One night in one of the earliest circles, an old man stood up. His voice cracked. I was part of NeuroSync, he confessed. I helped build the algorithms. I thought I was making the world safer, but I was wrong. He bowed his head. Silence. And then a young woman stood beside him, her voice trembling. I lost my brother to one of those algorithms. He couldn't live under constant surveillance. But tonight, I felt you, and I forgive you. They embraced. The entire circle began to cry. No words, just connection. That night, I watched from a distance, not as a creator, but as a witness. Elisa sat beside me. She took my hand. We didn't build a system, she whispered. We built a bridge. Lumen evolved faster than we imagined. It became a tool in therapy, diplomacy, education. Children used it to understand emotions. World leaders used it to hear their people, not just their votes, but their fears, their pain, their longing. The United Nations officially recognized emotional sovereignty as a human right. Global mental health rates improved. Conflict zones showed reduced hostility. But more than anything else, people remembered how to feel. And me? I stepped away from the labs. I started teaching again. But this time, not programming. I taught empathy architecture. Eliza and I moved into a quiet house by the coast. No cables, no firewalls, just ocean and silence and choice. Some nights I still logged into LUMEN, not as a developer, but as a human, to listen, to open, to remember. One evening a message came through, a voice I hadn't heard in years. Alex, this is your future self again. Just wanted to say, you did good. You chose connection over control, and the world is better for it. I smiled. Thank you, I whispered, and I closed the connection. If you ever wake up and receive a message from the future, don't be afraid. It's probably you, trying to remind yourself of who you were always meant to become. We are the future, and the future is ours to create. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real, powerful stories right here on English Fluency Strategies.